Comerica Park food employee is fired after spitting in food. Yeah, he I guess has been working there for like 3 years, and he was just caught by one of his colleagues, and his colleague was suspended for sharing the video on I guess social media, and the gentleman who has been the offender was fired, and all the food was destroyed, and the actual location was closed temporarily until they can obviously sanitize the place. He got I guess misdemeanor and a felony count for food law violations. Really, really interesting stuff. Sad. I don't like this to hear about this kind of thing because I guess this gentleman was working there for like 3 years, and who knows how many, pizzas he was spitting into before he'd put the sauce over it. I mean, it's just really disgusting stuff, man. So, welcome to the Radicards podcast on radicards.com. I'm your host, Patrick Greeno. Ryan Daly's joining us to talk about this agenda today, which is going to be interesting. We're going to be talking about I don't know, just a miscellaneous hodgepodge of stuff within the hobby, and I guess forgotten player profile. We'll get straight into it here. Ryan, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, man. So let's talk about this grading and resale values. When does it matter and when doesn't it matter, right? So, I've probably discussed this in some previous podcast, maybe even a blog post, but it's something I like to touch upon from time to time because I think that some of us as sellers feel that grading always helps resale. And, there might be an argument for I think a good portion of that, but it's not always the case. So let's take, for example, a card that, is so rare we might not see one in an entire lifetime, let's just say. And when it does surface, does it really matter that it's graded? I mean, honestly. It's like grades like out of pristine, it'd be just 10, right?
Sure.
Like, would it make you want the card any more that it's graded? Or just the fact that you finally saw the dang card that you like, I don't care that it's graded, I just want the dang card.
Yeah, if it's that rare, I think in terms of like vintage pieces, the grading, regardless of the number that you get back, just helps confirm authenticity
Right.
at the very least.
Yeah.
So, Mickey Mantle cards in 2s and 3s obviously do very well.
Sure.
But, it has to be a really special card to just sort of look past whatever grade you might have.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily think it helps with resale value across the board, but a lot of people do think that. People ship their cards off to BGS and PSA all the time thinking they'll get to flip these cards when really it might not really matter.
Yeah, I mean, look, as a collector of, well, this being my 30th year in the hobby, there are cards that, only just recently I finally saw an example of a card I've been looking for a long, long time. That it was graded a BGS 10. It was the 96 Select Certified Mirror Gold Pastime Power Frank Thomas. And we'll get to talking more about these auctions later in this podcast. But this particular card, it was graded BGS 10, and I'm like, I don't care that it's graded at all. And I really don't care that it graded out of pristine. I just, even if it graded out an 8, I still wouldn't care. I'd still try to get the card. Granted, in this example, it was bad timing for me, so I just was an observer. I just watched the auctions. But had I been in the participation bin for this particular auction, I would have bid aggressive regardless of the fact that it was graded. I just, honestly, I look at the card, not the grade.
Mm-hmm.
And so with something like that, don't care. Now, if you go back to like the 80s when they produced stuff in the billions of copies, yeah, you can have a little bit more discretion, and you can be choosy and picky because there's so many copies out there. And in that case, I have no reason, to go after anything other than a Gem Mint 10 example, PSA, let's say, because there's so many examples out there. And even in 10s, I can look for the best looking 10, the most centered. I can even have choosy and discretion even in 10s alone because there's so many copies printed and graded 10s. So in that situation, grading does matter. But so I guess there's a relationship between scarcity and grading relevance. The scarcer the card is, the less relevant grading becomes. The more abundant the card is in the market, the more significant grading becomes. And
Yeah.
so those are situations that I think that a lot of us can appreciate. But I think it comes down to, if this card is so rare, why would I send it in to have it graded? But to your point, it does help for authentication.
Yeah, that's the only thing I can really think of. And I have a few PSA 10s from the 80s and early 90s
Yeah,
of cards that are, like you said, printed, just in the billions. But they're key rookie cards. They're significant cards historically. So
right.
a PSA 10 is always good to have um, in that sort of mass production era.
Totally.
Um, I have an interesting dilemma I'm dealing with right now. I have a 2010 Mike Trout Pro Debut Blue Parallel, number to
Okay.
259.
Yeah.
It's got some rough edges. I know it's not going to come back a strong grade, and this isn't a card I'm trying to flip.
Sure.
But I think just for posterity and for my own collecting sort of OCD-ness, I kind of want to get it slabbed.
Well,
What do you
is that
think?
is that? I thought you had already sent that one in.
I have the same card. I have the base card that was autographed. So I sent that in for authenticity.
Ah, so
Now I have the blue raw
okay.
sitting, and I'm thinking about sending that in soon.
Yeah, I mean, there's no wrong answer here. It's just whatever you think is, how you feel most comfortable. And those blue parallels, the blue goes to the edge, so you're gonna have it's susceptible
Yeah.
to chipping and this kind of thing. So
Yep.
pretty normal stuff. But
Mhm.
if you feel like you need to have that card slabbed, send it in and get it slabbed. I mean, um, grading is helpful in these kinds of ways. And plus, the upside to grading, regardless of the scarcity of the card, is just it's protected. That investment
Mhm.
is protected. So if something should happen to you, somebody can sell that card and make a profit or make some money out of it. There's a guarantee that that will happen because it's been slabbed, it's been authenticated.
Mhm.
So in those situations, it really helps. I don't know if you caught a blog post I wrote some years back about 98 Flair Showcase masterpieces, the one of ones, and there was like they ran out of the ones for the, let's see, they were doing the legacy collection to 100s, and they ran out of the sheet with the blueprint, so they used some of the masterpiece purple print to print for the remainder of the legacy collections. So you've got a couple of the legacies that have some of the purple print and some of the blueprint on them in the same card. Whatever the case, is that there was another video on that blog post I grabbed and embedded it. The guy talks about his collection from basketball, and they're all masterpieces from that showcase series. And it was like Jordan and Kobe and all these other guys, and he had them all slabbed, but he had them all authenticated because just to have them slabbed authentic to him was more important than having them graded, because they're one of ones. Doesn't really matter the grade. It's just getting them authenticated. So I think grading authentication with high end stuff is there's merit there and there's benefit there. But when it comes down to your own personal collection, if you want to have something slabbed just for your own sake of just feeling comfortable with what it is and to minimize any additional condition flaws that could happen to, say, a blue bordered Mike Trout card from 2010 Topps Pro Debut,
Mhm.
yeah, man, have it slabbed.
All right, I'm going to do it.
It's a long answer to that, right?
You heard it here first.
You're right, right,
And
right.
I will get it back in 6 to 12 months. So
I think that they're pretty busy, but they're usually on top of their game over there at PSA.
yeah.
So, moving on, let's talk about modern low serial numbered cards. There are just infinite, varieties we can choose from the different rainbows. I mean, Topps and Bowman, they do the different sizes. The minis, Bowman's more like that thing. They'll do like Bowman mini, rookie, whatever, and then you've got all the different parallels, and then the base standard 2.5 by 3.5, all the different parallels. It's kind of exhausting. Okay. Let's talk about their place in the hobby and why they aren't significant. Okay. So this is an interesting conversation because the Superfractor is a one of one, and it's a significant, those are significant cards. They're just great design. You got this, this just a really cool pattern thing happening on those cards. They're beautiful. Doesn't matter the player. But if you get a Hall of Famer post-career, let's say, the guy's retired, not yet a Hall of Famer, or he could be a Hall of Famer, and it's, cards serial number to 50 from, let's say, an unlicensed brand like a Leaf or a Panini, and or something real obscure like Hits Memorabilia, and you get this card, if you send it in to have it graded a 10, then it's numbered to 50. Does that impact? This kind of goes back to our former point. Like, does that have impact on resale value, or does it even matter because there's so many versions of the card? It's not a rookie card, you
Hmm.
know. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think the numbering, like low numbering or quote unquote low numbering, I guess, in modern products has gotten a little out of hand. And I feel bad when people rip modern products and they get, a card that's numbered to like 25 or something, and they think they potentially might have a big card on their hands.
Hmm.
But really, most of the time you don't.
Yeah.
And I've gotten like hits in boxes of hobby stuff where it's a jersey card and it's numbered to 99, and like the fact that it's numbered to 99 doesn't even really add anything to the card. Um,
Yeah, and then who's the player?
yeah, exactly. Like maybe if it's not like a superstar type player, I'm talking like a top 5 kind of guy.
Totally.
It really doesn't matter.
Right.
Um, and I buy stuff at Target and Walmart every once in a while, and I'll get these numbered to 50, numbered to 99, numbered to 25, and it's yeah, it doesn't really mean much to me. I see it more of like it's like a parallel, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't really see it as a rare kind of thing to have in my collection, but
Yeah.
it's so ubiquitous. I mean, they're always out there.
Yeah.
I guess it's potentially like a lack of creativity in a way, but
The thing that is hard for me as a collector in the modern era is, you know, being excited about that stuff because there's so much of it: the green, the purple, the orange, the red, the gold, the blue, the base, the refractor. I mean, it's a lot. And so even if you're after one guy, you could be chasing up to like 30 cards between like the base size and the mini and like the plates, and and so it didn't used to always be like this. I remember there was a time years and years and years ago where if you pulled an insert, you always knew it was of a star player. Like
mm-hmm.
pulling an insert was like, oh my gosh, it's the hot rookie this year, or this is the hot rookie class, but there's like 10 cards in the set, and it's not 100 cards, it's 10 cards, and each one is like insertion ratio is kind of quite a bit. It's like 1 in 16, 1 in 24, 1 in 36, or 1 in 360 even. And so at those times, you always knew that what you pulled was like a solid, oh my, like awesome piece. So now it's really watered down to the point where like it's kind of a bummer that you pull a jersey card and you're like, great, I hope to get $1 for this. Like the shipping cost is going to cost more than what this card's worth. Like that's the kind of like discouragement I think a lot of us we face.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look, variety is great. It's the spice of life, but I also feel like there's also a tipping point there. Like at some point, variety becomes maybe too much and debilitating. Like choice is debilitating after a certain point. Like 3 options is nice. 30 options is not nice. Like it's too much. And so if I can see the end of the line out of the gate, I say, well, like 3 cards, I can probably do that. 6 cards, I could probably knock that out. 60 cards, I don't really want to bother. I'll just wait until another release. So like actually that company, that business lost me as a customer because of disinterest. Because it's just too much. You ever had that?
Yeah. I mean, back when I was a player collector of a modern guy, he started to be featured in a lot of newer products. And at first I thought it was cool, but then you start dealing with these things you're talking about, these endless parallels, endless cards that are numbered to this and that.
Yeah.
And if you're looking for like a completion sort of aspect to your collection, which I think most people are, it becomes really onerous and kind of frustrating and annoying sometimes.
Yeah.
Especially when you're sort of dealing with limited funds from time to time. I don't know. I don't think it's a great part of the hobby. I do like, I'm thinking of a product. This is like a reverse trivia for you, I guess.
Okay.
I think it was 2002 Triple Crown. They did like the cool like home run parallel.
Yeah.
And like the triple parallel and the double parallel. That was kind of cool because that made the serial numbers actually mean something.
Sure.
So like I remember I got the 2002 Triple Crown Nomar Garcia Parra home run, which he only hit 4 home runs that year. So the card was numbered to 4, which made it an extremely rare, highly sought after card.
You had one?
I had one, yeah.
Man, that's awesome. Yeah, so
that's, I guess those are my thoughts on that. It's become pretty outrageous, and it's kind of meaningless now.
well, also too, and is it the modern era? If you pull a, let's say a Hall of Famer or gonna be a Hall of Famer or like awesome player, superstar that's not a Hall of Famer, and say the card's numbered to 50, I mean, does it really matter? Because
Yeah.
there's so much of that stuff. There's like, dude, that's just one card from one release, one
Mhm.
parallel run of like hundreds and hundreds over the last like 5 years of that player. And so it almost is like, modern card number to 50 is not that big a deal. A modern
Nope.
card number to 25 is just not that big a deal because there's just another 10 or 20 of them in the pipeline in the next 3 months, and so it's kind of interesting to think about how it impacts your desirability of a product.
Yeah, and that's why I tend to stay away from the really high end stuff, the triple threads, and gosh, I know like they don't make Topps Tribute anymore, but those kind of products,
Sure.
where it's several $100s for a box, and
Or like $60 a pack or whatever.
Yeah, and they just keep going back to the well. They'll have Ty Cobb, they'll have Mickey Mantle, they'll have Babe Ruth,
Yep.
Who are great. Those are awesome guys to have on a card.
Totally.
But it's like, why would I pay that much money to get a Ty Cobb parallel number to 10 when his face has been on cards for the past probably like 20 years?
Yeah, I mean, they put him in a lot of product.
Nothing.
Yeah. Part of me feels like they should do away with serial numbers altogether.
Yeah, go back to just like insert ratios and I mean, I guess I don't have like a clear solution, but
there are. I mean, these are hard conversations to have and figure out. Like this, I don't know if there are any solutions to this kind of thing. I just know that the market is saturated with, low numbered stuff. It's almost like every time you open a pack, you get something low numbered. Back in the day, it was like, oh my gosh, you'd open up cases and not find something serial numbered to, 10,000.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's like you open a pack and you're almost certain you're going to get something numbered to 99. And so it's kind of lost some of that luster.
Yeah, well, like the last podcast we talked about, I think I bought a box, a retail box from Target of Topps Chrome.
Yeah.
Or no, Topps Update a few weeks ago.
Right.
And my quote unquote hit was a Yoan Moncada numbered to like 50.
Yeah.
So you can imagine my excitement.
So excited. Well, that brings us to the next point, which is personal value versus actual value, right? Like we place value on our own collections. And we think that, what would you pay for something in your own collection, like the Trout card? You might pay more because of sentimental value. Now, let's say you take that number and put it up on auction and you use that number as your selling point. Not everybody's going to agree with you. Granted, Trout's sort of, not a good example because he's so good and he's so sellable, so liquid. But let's say it's like, let's pull something out of my collection. Let's say it's a Steven Strasburg card. It's, mildly difficult to find. And I put it up on auction for $1,000 because I like the card and it's serial number to 100, and I just think it's a really, really cool card. But the market will just laugh at me because the card's not actually worth $1,000. You might list it and it might go for $6. But it's important to me because I remember X, Y, and Z, and then I have the sentimental value. I mean, you can fill in the blank with a card. Just pick a card at random that is important to you, and then take what you think it's worth to you, and not everybody's going to agree with that price point. I mean, this is selling 101, right? Like, you don't list stuff for what you think it's worth. You list stuff for what the market's willing to bear, either at a reasonable buy it now, or just basically the best thing you can do is list it at 99-cent auction style and let it ride, and the market will decide, where it's going to go. And that's honestly the most productive and efficient way to list items on eBay.
Yes. Yeah, if you actually want to sell it and make money.
Right. Or just let it sit there.
Yeah.
So,
and I've dealt with a few friends and family over the years that have discovered, cards that have been stashed away in a closet or, from their childhood or whatever it is.
Sure.
And I'll say, yeah, that card is worth, such and such. And they'll say, what? I remember buying this card when I was a kid. And if I'm going to sell it, I want at least this much money. And it's like, well, why are you selling it? If it means
times
that much
change,
to you,
man.
like sentimentally, like is $50 really going to like impact your financial situation? Like it's not. So just hold on to it.
Well, I mean, I've seen guys present me with binders of 90 Don Russ. And they're like, yeah, $500. And I was like, do you want to pay me $500 to take this off your hands? I'll
It's
take
the
it,
complete set, though.
$500.
It's the complete set.
I'll accept your offer of $500 to take this binder off of your hands. But no, I mean, it's kind of like, it's the never ending story, right? It's like you tell the people, yeah, I mean, they printed the heck out of these things, and unfortunately, the binder itself is probably worth more than the contents within the binder. And people are like heartbroken. I'm like, sorry, I don't think you invested that much money in this out of the gate anyway. It's not that big a deal. But, personally, when you go to sell something, you have to kind of remove emotion from it and look at it from a logical perspective. I mean, that's really the only way to look at a lot of things in life, is to remove emotion from it in your decision-making process. You have to look at these things completely objectively and logically in order to produce some like acceptable result, right, for both parties. And in this case, it's like, okay, I paid $10 for it. I might list it for 12, still, like, because my time is worth money, but I wouldn't list it for 50, because I paid $10 for it, but I want to make a huge profit on this, let's just say, so I'm going to list it for 50. That's just being irresponsible, because you're wasting your time. Now, if you wanted to list it for something like $12, maybe a little bit more than what you paid for it, because like I said, your time's valuable. I get that. Fine. Just be realistic about it. Be realistic about your expectations is where I'm trying to go with this.
Yeah, and that's why I enjoy going to shows so much, because for the most part, and there are exceptions to this rule, but for the most part, there are sellers there that are realistic, they're professional, they're aggressive, they're trying to sell.
Yeah.
And whenever I go to shows, I have friends ask me, like, why can't you can just go on eBay and buy this stuff? And yeah, I can. They're right. But eBay and the internet in general is full of these delusional sellers that have these crazy asking prices, where I can go to a show and I know these people are very motivated to sell. And if we don't come to a price at the end of the day, then oh well. But I know I have a much better chance with that type of seller than I do with a somewhat typical eBay seller.
Yeah, plus you get to see the card in person too, and so you can see condition flaws and edges and corners and surface, and you can really investigate and take a real close look at this card, and that helps your decision making. Online, unfortunately, it's just harder to do that, unless you have really nice clean scans, and then unfortunately, by design, eBay is not set up for everybody to submit clean scans. So you're going to have really hideous scans and blurry scans and scans that are sideways and upside down and whatever else. But in real life, when you see the card in person, it's nice. I mean, you get to really take a look at this thing, and just make a decision, a very educated guess on whether or not you want to buy something. You don't have to worry about it coming in. It's like, oh, it's creased. Oh, it's not the red refractor that I thought I was going to get. And so that's helpful. It is.
Yeah, definitely. And I have cards set aside in my collection that I know have little to no value to anybody except for me.
Sure.
I'm never going to try and move them. I'm never going to try and trade them. They're just in my collection because for a specific sentimental reason.
Right. I have a lot of those myself too. And I still buy them to this day.
Yeah, exactly. I still buy them. Maybe I overpay for them sometimes, but I think you just have to make that delineation in your collection. Like, these are cards that have actual value, and these are cards that don't really have any value except to me personally.
Right. And that's expected. Just know that you're never going to get your value online or in person of the stuff that you bought that's sentimental to you, and just accept that those are what we call sunk costs. And there's nothing wrong with that. We don't collect, all of us, for profits all the time. We collect sometimes just because we like the card. End of story. And so anyway, I just want to touch on that. Let's move on to this next piece here. We discussed this earlier just a touch, but I want to dig right into it here. PWCC listed a block of 13 different 1996 Select Certified Mirror Golds, and in that lot was the entire Pastime Power run less the Ken Griffey Jr., which means the Frank Thomas was in there, and 4 cards from the base run. And so, really solid, incredible prices on these cards. I didn't expect the Chan-Ho Park to close at over $1,800.
International market, man.
I know. That's
I
the
don't
thing.
know what else
every time.
Yeah.
Every
There's
time.
No way. I mean, just based off of his American career, there's no way that that price makes sense. So
Right.
it's got to be the, and he's a significant player for Korean Americans and
Oh, absolutely.
for Koreans. So, but
Absolutely.
yes, it's still a crazy price. I know we were both sort of looking at the Movan, and we didn't make a move at it, but
Right. I wasn't planning on bidding on that card, but I was watching all of them. And yeah, Mo and Javi Lopez both closed under $100. I was surprised to see the Hideo Nomo Pastime Power close just over 400 when his standard card in the set, the base card in the set, the Mirror Gold, closed about a month ago for over 900. So I thought that the Pastime Power would perform a little bit better. The Mike Piazza Pastime Power closed in the 900 block. So I was like, gosh, these prices are so high. And I don't know when I'll see these again. They're extremely rare. But it was nice to see the Thomas Pastime Power because I'd always wanted to see what that card looked like in any format. So it was cool to kind of watch those. So yeah, 13 of these surfaced from PWCC. Who knows when we'll see some of these cards again? I got to see the Tony Gwynn again. I've seen that one before. Cal Ripken. They sold both of the Ripkins in the set on that run. Just really cool to watch. Bernie Williams was in that lot as well. I really like the Pastime Power stuff at the end of the set. I think those are cool looking cards.
Bernie went for less than 100, right?
No, Bernie closed it over 100.
Over, okay.
Yeah, I'm actually pulling
Bernie's...
up the blog post now. If you're listening and you're not on the site, go to radicards.com and just type in Mirror Gold, and you can see this will come up as and then search query, and you can see these images and the price points. The Thomas closed at over 4,000, which is right where I expected it to close. Yeah, Greg Maddox pastime was 667. Albert Bell at 129, which I thought was low.
Wow.
Let's see here. Yeah. So Chipper Jones was 1256.
Ooh.
Yeah, pretty steep.
Do you know the history of the Griffey? Is that has that sold like within the past couple of years, or has it surfaced recently?
I've never seen the Griffey at auction. I've seen a scan of the Griffey, but I've never seen it listed for sale. But yeah, it's a monster of a card. Serious spending on that one. Yeah, the Ripken card number 53 sold for 2,600. So, oh yeah, the Bernie Williams was at 150. So he was
150.
He was low, but really cool to watch these. I mean, these are really just awesome cards. Yeah, definitely go to radicards.com if you're not already there and search Mirror Gold and check this article out. I've got the images there and price points, bids, number of bids. I mean, it's typical for how I the content I publish for list of auctions and stuff like that. So take a look. It's really cool stuff. I really dig that a lot. And it was fun to watch those auctions. It was kind of exciting to see kind of them all close.
Yeah, this happens every once in a while where either a private seller will just sell off their significant collection.
Yeah.
Or a more public-facing eBay seller like PWCC will buy a collection and kind of piece it out like this. And
right.
I think I remember like the Stand and Deliver. Remember that?
Where
it was framed and it was uncut,
amazing.
And then they cut it and they sold it off individually. That was pretty significant.
Yeah, but so those were the red letters, really elusive red letter versions, and their print run is to 25. I personally would have left the entire frame intact.
Yeah, it's so much cooler.
Gosh, you know how rare it is to find a fully intact frame with those cards in them? I mean, granted, the gentleman who cracked out all the cards listed the Thomas, and I was the buyer, and I was able to get the red lettered Thomas into my collection back then. That was some years back now, but I was able to get that card because of that. But still, if I had that framed item, knowing the scarcity of that framed item, I would have just kept it intact and enjoyed it, put it in my office or something. Such a rare find.
Yeah. But that's a significant one.
Super.
These select certified Mirror Golds, that was a pretty fun string of auctions to watch.
Yeah. There have been many. I mean, there have been a lot of this kind of thing, and it's fun to watch. You know, I've been a fan of PWCC for a long time, and they always list such cool pieces, and I'm a frequent buyer. I'm a return customer. Same with Propstein. It's just fun to kind of see where what surfaces, like these old, like super rare boutique 90s inserts. So I just wanted to touch on that because that's, to me, was fun to watch, and I'm sure other people paid attention to those. I know I've been kind of back and forth with a gentleman on one of the forums who was intrigued as well by the lots. So cool stuff. 1996 select certified mirror golds listed by PWCC, and they sold. They're archived on Radicards.com, so go check those listings out just to like have a look at what these cards look like. Just do yourself a favor and just to see what they look like, because who knows when we'll see some of these cards again. I don't know when I'll see the Chan-Ho Park ever again. So anyway, moving on. Let's talk about the Rookie of the Year awards. It's really cool stuff. My predictions. We had predictions a couple of podcasts back, and I was spot on with my predictions. AL Rookie of the Year, of course, Ohtani. I mean, I think it would be irresponsible to pick anybody else, honestly.
Yeah, and if you look at the breakdown of the Writers Association, their voting, I think like 27 of them had Ohtani in first place. So it was pretty heavily marked in his favor.
Yeah. I mean, I can't think of anybody else that I would put in there. And honestly, I think it'd be insulting if I picked anybody else besides Ohtani.
Well, I hope there's no Yankees fans listening, but so Miguel Andujar and Gleyber Torres were the other two guys that could have potentially taken that Rookie of the Year.
Oh yeah.
And they had great seasons. Don't want to take anything away from him, but what Ohtani did was just so incredible.
Yeah.
And the fact that he was hurt for a fairly significant portion of the year, and he still put up the offensive numbers that he did.
Totally.
While pitching, I mean, it was just incredible. And I guess if you are a Yankees fan that's listening, don't be upset because you lost the Rookie of the Year. But now on your team, you have the guy that finished second place for Rookie of the Year, and you have the guy that finished third place for Rookie of the Year. So that should make you feel pretty good about your team going forward.
There you go. Not to mention that like CV of accolades you have under your belt for the Yankees.
Yes.
I mean, there's no sense in getting upset ever
Yeah,
if
don't
you're a
get
Yankee
upset,
fan.
Yankees fans. You'll be fine.
It's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And then NL Rookie of the Year, Ronald Acuna Jr., which I expected as well, just because of like his performance and his. I mean, I look at also like not just on field. I also look at like what's happening in the hobby, like who's buying what right now, like what's really popular.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if I can't really like equate hobby interest to like its influence on who's going to be selected Rookie of the Year, but because I see so much activity on certain players. And then I go and like look at their stats, and I like kind of see like what kind of performance they've produced, and then kind of get a feel for this gentleman's personality and like how good they are at playing baseball. And so I selected this guy initially because I think he's just like fun to watch. He's got a great personality, and he's very talented. So I'm glad that to see both of these guys get the award this year. It's I think that the Braves fans are probably pretty excited right now too, knowing that their guy got ROI. Thoughts, comments, concerns, questions?
Nope. And then the Braves fans also, like Yankees fans, they had two guys in the running for Rookie of the Year with Ozzie Albies and Acuna. So those two teams going forward are looking real good. We're sort of going back to like the mid to late 90s with the powerhouses in New York and Atlanta. So. And kind of led by these young guys. So
yeah,
next year is going to be really fun for those two teams.
Gosh, yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch, kind of see how this unfolds. I honestly hope that Ohtani does have more productive seasons, and he remains healthy to some degree to allow him to do that. That he's a two-talent player, it makes things a lot easier, I think, on him in terms of how to use the guy. But yeah, so cool stuff. Ohtani and Acuna are the two Rookie of the Years this year, 2018. Ryan, you want to talk about the MVPs this year?
Yeah, so real quick, I mean, everyone's talking about this. It's been covered, but Mookie Betts, Christian Yelich, I don't really think there's a debate against either of these two guys. They had phenomenal seasons.
Yeah.
Mookie Betts specifically, he had his firstborn. He has an MVP MVP award and a World Series championship. And I think a Silver Slugger on top of that. So fantastic year for him. And he's still relatively young. I mean, the Red Sox again are just an incredible team.
They really are.
Looking into the future, they have some amazing homegrown talent, and um, Mookie Betts was, and this is coming from a very biased Angels fan who thinks that Mike Trout should get every accolade possible. So I think that Mookie Betts, I was totally for Mookie Betts. I mean, his year was amazing, and I'm disappointed in myself for sleeping on his rookie card. It's like 2014 tops traded.
I think we're all disappointed in that, but we're more disappointed that we didn't do anything in 2011 tops update.
Oh yeah, there you go. Yep. I guess the Mike Trout stuff was.
Well, not just that set is full of superstars.
Yeah, full of it. Yep.
Like full. And so it's just now looking back, it's like, gosh, hindsight, man, is always 2020, you know?
Yep, that's why the update stuff is always intriguing to me, because I tend to buy a little bit of it, and I keep
buy a lot of it now.
Yeah, I just keep all the rookie cards. I'm like, I don't know who any of these people are, but I mean, they could be the next fill in the blank, you know?
Right. I mean, you have to kind of wait. I mean, it's been 7 years since 2011, so you have to kind of wait 5 to 7 years for some of these guys to blossom. JD Martinez is in the 2010 Bowman Chrome set.
Yeah, it took a while for JD to kind of make his name. Yeah, the 2011, 2010 stuff is really like chock full of superstars. Mm-hmm. But like you said, it took a while for us to realize, like, oh my God, those products are just incredible.
They're incredible.
From what kind of players came out of those products?
It's so concentrated with talent. You know, it's like almost every year goes by, there's another guy who's coming up that was in that set and has a Hope Diamond parallel that's like $1,000.
Yeah,
you know, and so it's really cool to kind of watch that over the years.
NL MVP Christian Yelich, 2010.
Yeah, he's in 2010 Bowman Chrome prospects. He's got autos in there that are selling really well right now.
Yeah, and he's in the old Marlins uniform, which I think is kind of cool.
That is pretty cool. So those guys that certainly deserve their awards. Did you want to talk about the Cy Young Award recipients this year?
Yeah, Blake Snell and Jacob deGrom.
Yeah,
if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, that's correct.
I don't think there was any serious competition there. I'm trying to think back. I know Chris Sale put up some amazing numbers.
Like always.
He was also dealing with some injuries. He had missed some innings, and so I think at the end of it, his inning count was fairly low. Whereas Jacob deGrom, his stats are pretty crazy because he only had like 10 wins. I think he went like 10-10 on the season. But that's because he was playing on such a poor team in the Mets. They just couldn't back him up ever. But he still, I mean, put together an amazing season.
Yeah. Scherzer came right behind him.
Scherzer.
For the National League Cy Young. And for the American League Cy Young, Verlander came right behind Snell. I mean, this isn't surprising, right? Like, Snell and deGrom might be household names at some point. You know, I know Verlander and Scherzer are already. Snell, I think, is relatively new, but he's certainly dominant. I mean, he's a great player, great pitcher.
Yeah, that's a really fun team down in Tampa. And Blake Snell's is got to be like the cornerstone going forward. So I think he deserves it, and I hope that sort of like supercharges that team, because they play in all these against all these incredible teams.
Yeah.
In the AL East, they play against the Yankees and the Red Sox. I mean, it's got to be so tough to go out there and play like the majority of your games against those teams. But if you have someone like Blake Snell on your side, who you can throw out there, 20 times a season, that's got to make you feel good.
Really it was an awesome season. It just was a lot of fun. So we had a good time in 2018. Moving on here, let's talk about, speaking of Acuna, his Superfractor 2018 Topps Chrome Superfractor auto was pulled and listed. and it garnered 71 bids, and it closed at 13,600. I actually blogged about this. Again, go to radicards.com, type in Ronald Acuna, or if it's not still on the front page anyway, and you can have a look at this auction and this particular card. Really interesting stuff. Now, check this out. Here's the curveball, right? Is that the card was then relisted that same day, less than 24 hours later. Like that evening, it was relisted. And within like less than 24-hour span, it already reached $10,000. And the card right now is getting close to its original valuation, and it has days and days to go. So it's going to be interesting because there's a comp now. There's a $13,000 comp on this card now. So you can actually see kind of where to expect it to go. Now, it's kind of breaks my heart when something gets relisted, because it's like I had just published that blog post and I saw it relisted. I was like, dang, it was listed at the perfect time, because it was listed like 3 or 4 days before the Rookie of the Year awards were announced, like the actual the 2 guys.
Yeah, great timing.
Yeah, and then he was nominated to get his award, and then it closed a couple of days later. So it brought a lot of traction to this particular auction, which I think helped garner its 13,000 plus final price tag. Yeah, it was listed on Thursday, November 7th. On Monday, 11/12, Ronald Acuna is selected as the 2018 National League Rookie of the Year. And on Thursday, 11/14, the Superfractor listing ends. And it closed at, like I said, 13,600. So it's really interesting to see that was like, I don't know if it was an intended strategy, but it was really cool to kind of watch that happen with 71 bids. That's a lot of activity. So I want to touch on that. I just thought it was weird that it was relisted within, less than 12 hours. Like, let's put it right back up. So
yeah, I think trying to ride the Rookie of the Year wave, I guess.
I don't know. I mean, you got to remember, like, something's usually relisted when a buyer, contacts the seller and says, I can't pay, or I'm retracting my bid. I mean, these are really highly undesirable situations, but they do happen. And so I can't imagine any other scenario which would, or this was shilled, but I don't know really what's happening. It's just interesting to watch it the second time and kind of see where it goes. So yep. Cool stuff. Do you have any comments on that?
Yeah. So the listeners can go find this listing and see the scans for themselves. And I had commented on the original posting with you that because this is a redemption card, it came back from Topps with their weird sticker deal, which I've had some redemption cards in the past. I've never really been a fan of this, where they put the sticker over the top loader, or they have some sort of other like unique way of packaging the card.
Yeah, the sticker should go inside the top loader. You know?
But then like one side of me thinks just get rid of it, take it out, package it, and store it how you want to do it. Then the other part of me thinks, well, I'm just not going to touch it. I'm just going to leave it exactly how it came from Topps. So I don't know. It's tricky. I wish that Topps wouldn't put us in that situation.
Yeah. So
it is what it is.
I'm a purist. So like I would leave it in this thing. I'm going to leave it intact and be completely happy with it in a top loader. As a user of top loaders myself, in a very like abundant, like significant way, I'm a huge fan of this storing cards in this way. I just think that the sticker on top is a little invasive.
The sticker's awful. It's covering like half of his head.
I know. I mean, so it's like if the sticker was literally half that size and just like peeked over the top there, I'd be totally fine with it. It's a little invasive for what it is, but whatever. I mean, you can still enjoy the card and and be okay with the fact that you spent 5 figures on this thing. But it's cool. I mean, it's on-card signature, which I totally respect. I think Superfractors should always be on-card, but that's just my own opinion. So anyway, I just want to touch on that because it's kind of cool to see the significant card as it was sold at almost the perfect time and then being relisted within that day, really, that same day. Not even 24 hours later. It was like that evening. It was like really cool to watch that. So I just want to touch on that. But let's move on. Now, Ryan, we'd kind of talked about this before we were recording, is that some of the players who kind of come into the league and they fizzle, or they don't even really get a chance to just kind of come up and then a game or two and then they're gone. And that's the end of it. So I want to talk about forgotten player profile, Freddie Sandoval. Now, let's talk about this guy for a little bit. I'm going to talk about it a little bit, and then Ryan's going to talk about some history with this guy too.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Freddie came up with the California Angels. He played from '08 to '09, and he logged exactly 11 games in those 2 years. He had 17 at bats. He had 3 hits, 0 home runs, and a batting average of 176 career. It's just not good. No RBIs. Never got to third base. Never stole a base. He had a bases on balls. He had 1. I mean, the guy really didn't really. I mean, nothing really happened with this gentleman. He was debuted on September 8th, 2008, at the age of 26, and his last game was October 4th, 2009, just over a year later. So he really only played 1 year, right? But he's logged for 2 years because he played in 2 separate seasons. So this is like a guy that maybe was discussed in circles for a minute back in 2008 with the Angels, but we never. I mean, he fell out of relevance. He kind of went obscurity almost immediately. So that to me is, in a way, it's kind of heartbreaking, but it's almost typical in a lot of ways. There are a ton of guys like this.
Mm-hmm.
So Ron, you want to talk about some more of his stuff that's off the field?
Yeah. So Freddie Sandoval is now a professional coach, and he has a consulting business that he runs. So it's pretty interesting how some players pivot from a professional sports environment into something completely different.
Yeah.
And I'm sure some of his coaching and consulting he picked up from, some of his own coaches when he was coming up in the minors. But it really doesn't have a whole lot to do with baseball. And I know that Freddie Sandoval was probably very promising at one point, but at least according to some things I've read, he was nagged by injuries a lot, which is sort of a common storyline.
Sure.
Very unfortunate storyline, but it happens when you're playing sports. So this is like a sort of a podcast on its own, potentially, of like looking at players that never really made it and then completely went in a different direction career-wise.
Mm-hmm.
That's got to be hard. You put your heart and soul into something probably since you were like 16, maybe younger, and then it just doesn't work out. And guys like Freddie Sandoval, they didn't really even have a chance to make like the serious money that baseball and other sports have to offer.
Well, I mean, he did his cumulative earnings, at least according to BaseballReference.com, were $814,000 across the 2 years. So that to me is significant, but it's nowhere near what like guys are getting paid like this gigantic salaries, like the 9-figure Albert Pujols salaries, right? But that comes with performance. I mean, you pay for talent. It's in that Batman movie, the modern one with Heath Ledger playing Joker, the line he says is, if you're good at something, never do it for free. So you have to pay everybody in baseball some amount of money because they're doing it. But the people that are performing at such a high level, they're getting paid serious premiums. Okay. Mm-hmm. So he made, maybe before taxes, obviously, $814,000. And, it's the hope that, he turned that into something more than $814,000. And so, it's probably heartbreaking to think that you spent all this time playing baseball and getting in the majors, and then you didn't even get a shot at being much because there's no patience for waiting for you to be good. But it's nice to know he took those talents and did something else with them. A lot of guys they're like, baseball is the only thing I'm good at, and then they're not good enough at it. So what are you going to do now?
Yeah, like a lot of guys, they pivot into something that's related. They'll teach at the high school level, or coach at the high school level, coach at the college level.
Yeah.
Or they'll be like in broadcasting or something.
Right.
But it's always interesting to see when someone just completely does like a 180 and goes in a different direction.
Admirable, though.
I'm sure if you met Freddie Sandoval at his workplace or like in a professional setting, you would never guess that he was at one time a promising young Major League Baseball player.
Yeah, but I mean, what's cool about the situation is he's like applying this stuff to something else.
Yeah, it's totally cool.
you kind of accept your losses and move on. I mean, breakups are hard, but it's kind of cool. So I wanted to touch on that. Yeah, well, so you can find him in products from 2007 to 2009. I think that's about right. Sadly, we lost a comic book icon. Mr. Stan Lee passed away recently at the age of 95. He's the founder of so many iconic comic book characters. And I grew up collecting vintage Amazing Spider-Man. I still pick up a book here and there when I'm at a con or something, chip away at the 60s and 70s stuff. But I actually was at a con in LA where he was a keynote speaker. So I was in the same room as him at one point, which I thought was cool.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah, he's really pivotal. I mean, he's one of the guys that created the legends that we've all come to know as the superheroes, right? Like, he's credited for a lot of that stuff. So I was sad about the news, but he's always going to be. He's forever in the ethos of comic books and just general art. I just think it's so cool. So, do you remember him at all?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the sports card hobby and the comic book entire universe is so closely related.
Yeah. And
I don't really know a whole lot about collecting comic books, but I certainly respect it. And whenever I'm at a show where there's comics being displayed, I always sneak a peek just because I'm curious. So I see what sort of effect that Stan Lee had on people, and if it's just casual people that are going to see these incredible movies that are being made out of his stories, or if it's the more hardcore fans that are, investing in his comic books. It's a pretty incredible impression that he's made. And
totally, a good chunk of the Marvel universe was created by Stan Lee. Okay, so he spent so many years in comic books that. And he created some of the most iconic and most collected characters in all of comic books. And I bring this up, I know as listeners, we're card collectors, but growing up and going to local card shops, most of them had sections for comic books. Like, we're so connected in that way that, comic books and sports card collectors. When I grew up, it was always back and forth. I started out with comics, went to cards, went back to comics, went back to cards, and went back and forth for a number of years. Now I collect cards ardently, obviously, but when I go to a con, I'm like, well, I might look for an old Spider-Man book, or pull up my old checklist and see which ones I still need. And it's still part of me. I don't have that same. My passion for comics is different than my passion for cards, but the appreciation for that category is just the same. I still appreciate it. So I just want to touch on that and sort of end on that because. Although sad, I just wanted to kind of celebrate Stan Lee because he was such an important icon to people. He left his mark in the world, and I just really respect him for that.
Yeah, so. And if a cool crossover between sports cards and the comic world, I think in 2011, Allen and Ginter, there's a nice sort of framed mini auto that if you're a fan of Stan Lee listening. Go check that out. I think there's also a framed mini memorabilia card, but he's got some stuff sort of scattered throughout the hobby. Check that out if you're interested.
Yeah, 2011 he's in Allen Ginter. It's funny, I go online sometimes, check out Amazing Fantasy number 15, First Appearance of Spider-Man, and people have had them signed by Stan Lee.
Wow.
And that's a really significant 5-figure book, and they're having him. Yeah, it's having it signed by Stan Lee.
Interesting choice.
Yeah. It's like having a Mickey Mantle 51 Bowman signed by Mickey, which I've seen. I've seen 51 Bowman signed by Mickey Mantle many times, but it's just it's cool. So you have some stuff in Ginter if you're interested. Out in 2011, Allen Ginter, Stan Lee, he's available, and there are different versions of the cards and things like that. So. Anyway, Ryan, that closes us out for this podcast. Do you have any final thoughts?
I think we covered it. This was a great agenda.
That was a nice agenda.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Thank you. And if you have comments you want to share, hop on over to radicards.com. Leave us a comment. Or if you're on YouTube and you want us to leave it on the YouTube as well, it's fine. We always appreciate them on the blog. So anyway, thanks so much for tuning into the Radicards podcast on radicards.com. I'm your host, Patrick Reno. Thank you again, Ryan, for joining us. And until next time, enjoy collecting. If you like this content, please subscribe. Thank you. Enjoy collecting.